The year is 1999. The euro is officially the currency of 11 countries. The Phantom Menace happened, and SpongeBob SquarePants first appears on Nickelodeon as the world looks ahead into the new millennium. And on September 9th, 20 years to the day, Sega released this magical little box. And it didn't just launch Sega's final hope, it also kickstarted the 6th console generation, and its legacy went a little something like this.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't think it's much of a secret that I have a rather soft spot for this underappreciated in its time piece of hardware. So, for the next 10 or 20 minutes, in light of a very special 20th anniversary, I'd like to talk about why I love this system so much. It's an uncharacteristically warm May in Tokyo, as Sega lays out their plans for the future. A fully, natively 3D capable machine with arcade-perfect gameplay and whatever this is supposed to be. Many watched in awe as Sega unveiled partnerships with Hitachi, NEC, Microsoft and Yamaha for what was, at the time, a glimpse into a golden future. We learned of the raw 3D power inside the white shell, and of the new memory card with a screen that would not only save our progress, but also let us take experiences on the go with us. Many big names came out to see this new system, this new Dreamcast, and for a moment, it all seemed to be going in the right direction. For all this hubbub, the Tokyo announcement made one erroneous misstep which would seem disastrous today. Sega forgot to show off any games, which is weird, because the Dreamcast launched like this. Let's start with Soul Calibur, Bandai Namco's swashbuckling fighting game, and a hardware breakdown. See, when Sega set out to make this system, one of their goals was to make the arcade experience come home with perfect ports of their coin-gobbling hits. So when it came to the actual hardware inside the system, Sega used the same Hitachi Super H CPU from their Naomi arcade kits, overclocked it a little bit, and added more RAM. What resulted was not only arcade-perfect ports, but also smoother, more consistent frame rates than their arcade counterparts. What this made for was the best home version of many fighting games released, not just limited to this fantastic edition of Soul Calibur. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, all received fantastic releases on Sega's little box. Truth be told, if you're just looking for a good game to play and you don't really know what you want, you really can't go wrong with any of the 2D fighting games on Dreamcast, especially the ones from Capcom. Speaking of, their partnership with Sega, with their many arcade releases, led to this, one of the system's most cult series. Power Stone. This is Capcom's super unique and super fun fighting game? Competitive beat 'em up? Platform fighter? Party game? Whatever it is, it's a fantastic addition to the system's library. Originally an arcade release, Capcom and Sega came to exclusivity terms with the Dreamcast version, and it remains a cult classic on the system to this day. Things got even better with the sequel released a year later, and to this day, both remain sought-after titles for enthusiasts. That wasn't to say that Sega was going to rely on third-party support for top-notch arcade titles on their system. Enter my personal favourite game on the system, and the title that's so 90s it hurts, Crazy Taxi. You want 60 frames per second high-octane, high-scoring stunt madness in what appears to be the Bay Area of San Francisco? Well, you can have it. Crazy Taxi takes all of that, wrapped up in the late 90s economic boom, and screeches into your heart with a hyped up dose of mega commercialism. From the music to the in-game advertisements, it gives the player a very welcoming, friendly step into the game and immediately lets you know that, hey, buddy, you've got to get a move on because time is limited and all of these people, yeah, they've got places to be. This home version also came packaged with a ton of extra features, including a mission mode and custom game modes for hours of fun. Just like the system, it's got a very special place in my heart and is a must for any enthusiast. The launch period for the Dreamcast was a great one, with initial sales breaking 1 million units within the first 2 months. Everything seemed stable, but as we all know, that didn't last. It's now officially the year 2000. The Dreamcast has been in the hands of consumers now for almost a year, and things are getting weird. See, the system was supposed to hit 2 million units by March 2000, but due to a sudden slowdown of sales, that goal was moved to December, mostly thanks to the imminent arrival of Sony's PlayStation 2. So, to combat this, an influx of new and daring titles hit the scene. I think it's fair to say that at this time, the Capcom-Sega relationship was starting to strain. Capcom released this, Resident Evil Code Veronica, as a system exclusive, even going as far as to give Japanese owners a special pre-order sleeve for the game, but it was met with middling sales due to the lack of Dreamcast hardware in homes. You can't really blame them for their frustration either, since in the build-up to release, Capcom went as far as to put out full-fledged versions of both Resident Evil 2 and 3 on the system. Seriously, these are no mere ports, with bonus features available from the get-go, high-resolution support, and great quality-of-life additions, such as your character's health being readable on the VMU screen. They had every right to be grumpy at the situation, and the inevitable release of an extended cut of Code Veronica on the PS2 was, well, it was frankly inevitable. At this point, Sega really brought out the big guns, slashing the cost of the system from $200 to $150 in August, and started trying out new games and, most importantly, new types of experiences. Most notable among these titles is Shenmue. This open-world tale of revenge and family drama is easily one of the most impressive games on the system, if not of the time. At this point, a world this size on a console was unheard of. It's quickly become a cult classic, with a beloved sequel, and finally a third installment arriving in the coming months. Sadly, we also saw this experimenting with titles go the other direction, with schlock like The Ring: Terror's Realm getting an undeserved Western release. I've already given my thoughts on that one, so if you're interested, you should go and watch that video after this one. Sadly, none of this was enough. On March 31st, 2001, the Sega Dreamcast was officially discontinued and Sega restructured into a third-party publisher for the other major platforms. However, the console's finale was yet to arrive. What I have in my hands are the 4 parts of the Sega Dreamcast Swan Song, and with the exception of Sega Smash Pack here, what I'm also holding are some of the rarest and most sought after games on the system due to low sales figures, due to releases during that, well, closing out period. Let's start with Cannon Spike. Released in November of 2000, this was only available on store shelves for a few short months before being removed. And it's a shame, because it's a really fun game. This is another Capcom arcade title, this time an overhead shooter set in a multiverse revolving around my favourite Street Fighter character, Cammy White. It's yet another arcade-perfect masterpiece that I wish more people had the joy of playing. But after this, it never got a re-release, it's never graced another platform. which is a shame because prices of this game are getting astronomically high. If you ever get the chance to, I implore that you invest in a copy and enjoy something that only a few people have ever had the chance to. Or, not that I'd advocate visiting certain sites ran by Swedes currently locked up in Vietnam, find an ISO or something. Up next is Bang-I-Oh. This cave shooter is actually a port of a Nintendo 64 game, but with CD quality music and updated visuals. It is fun, but I can't help but feel that this game's notability comes from it being released only 10 days before Sega announced the system's discontinuation. Talk about cutting it close! Either way, this one isn't quite as expensive as Cannon Spike, but theoretically is rarer due to having less official sales. Again, worth your time, but it's not as good as the other titles on the system. The third is this, Garou, Mark of the Wolves, or simply Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves for this particular release. This is a weird one, since unlike the others, this one came out long after the system's discontinuation, in September of 2001. This is easily, without doubt, the best fighting game made by the guys over at SNK. This port is great, but the console's native controller isn't exactly the greatest thing on the planet for this. I'd recommend investing in an arcade stick or a third-party controller before you get into this one. Or, if you want to save a few pennies, this has an excellent Xbox Live Arcade release that's also back compatible on Xbox One. I should probably address this finally. Yes, the Dreamcast controller is... well, there's no way around it. It's a complete and utter mess. For a start, the cable comes out of the bottom, not the top. The triggers, they're far too deep. The D-pad is underneath the analog stick, but you know what? I just want to make a point now, once and for all. It could have been a lot worse. Check out some of these prototype designs. Frankly, I should be grateful I got this. Speaking of a lot worse, this. The final release from Sega, and it's a bit of a pig. Sega Smash Pack was supposed to be a celebration of the past, but instead all it celebrates are the early 2000 financial woes of the company. To call the emulation work here poor would be a grand understatement. Just look at the Sonic 2 title screen for God's sake. Even Streets of Rage 2's soundtrack is messed up. However, there was a weird little something about this particular release that did something very special. Piracy had been a constant issue during the life of the Dreamcast. According to some, the combination of that and the PS2 is what's to blame for the system's early demise, thanks to how incredibly easy it was to run pirated games. Initially, the system used GD-ROMs, a proprietary disk type developed for Sega by Yamaha, but in development for testing, standard CD-ROMs were used. On paper, this was a perfectly sane copy protection system. The only way it could fail would be in the instance of, I don't know, say, a development kit was to fall into nefarious hands. Which was exactly what happened. Exact details are fuzzy, but in late 1999, shortly after the North American release, a katana development kit was stolen from Sega Japan by a hacker group called Utopia. From this development kit, Utopia worked out that any retail system could be forced to play CD-ROM games by first inserting a disc that descrambled the system's copyright lockout. I'm not smart enough to explain all of this, so I've left a link to a fantastic blog which breaks it down by Fabian Sanglard, I apologise I've mispronounced that, in the description. So now that the general public could burn off any game they wanted with ease, the system seemed wide open. Well, sort of. Utopia didn't really care about the development side of the system, they only really seemed to care about, well, piracy. Enter another hacking group called Echelon, based in the United States. And this is where Sega Smash Pack comes back into the story. See, if you pop a Dreamcast game into a Windows PC, you can find a few little gems. Usually it's stuff like extra music, cheat codes, so on and so forth. But on this one, there was something else. Enter Gary Lake, once upon a time a programmer over at Sega. Knowing that this was his last Dreamcast game and Sega's last release on the system, he saw fit to hide a little something extra. Gary knew that Echelon was going to dig through this disk, and so he left a little text file called echelon.txt. Inside was this. See, to you and me, this doesn't mean much. However, what it was just so happened to be instructions for how to program and run the Genesis emulator for the Dreamcast that he made. And thanks to this, in combination with SDK reverse engineering by the guys over at Utopia, something that should not have happened, happened. The Dreamcast found new and independent developers who are releasing games on the system to this day, such as this. Breakers. Seriously, this is a Dreamcast game from 2017. Okay, well technically it's a port of a Neo Geo game from 1996, but the point stands. A new game on the system 16 years after the official support ended. And this isn't the only one. Google Dreamcast games released this year, and you'll find many ongoing projects, from ports of existing titles to all new experiences that you can't find anywhere else. There's even people working on getting the online services working again. That's right, a dedicated group working with, guess what, Raspberry Pi units trying to get the Sega Dreamcast online functions back in 2019. In the face of death, after the DNR order had been issued, the little grey box that could pulled itself back from the edge, arguably with the thing that put it there in the first place. And an ongoing, rabid fanbase keeps the system alive with their love for it. Even with the controller made for crab people, I've gotta say, I'm crazy for this stupid system. Come here, you. It goes a bit deeper than just games for me though. See, I didn't actually start collecting for Dreamcast until I moved to the United States in late 2014. I just left nearly everything I had behind, been through a horrible year in my personal life, and the one thing that had kept me going the whole time was my now wife Liz. Knowing this, and knowing that I was quite literally about to start my video game hobby anew, Liz did something for me that set me down this wonderful Sega-filled rabbit hole. Like I said earlier, I'm a big fan of Street Fighter, and my favourite character from the series is Cammy White, and for a very long time, my holy grail game was Cannon Spike. Again, I'd had a terrible year thanks to my family back home falling apart, constant arguing with the administration at my university, and a bunch of other stuff that doesn't matter. So what Liz did was save up money from her then minimum wage job and, well, wait for a local game store to get Cannon Spike traded in. Somehow, by someone, God knows who, it got traded in and Liz pounced on it. She also got me a system, and to a lot of people, I get it. It seems like a weird gesture. But after that god-awful year, to me it was everything. And from that seed, I started a collection, and today it looks something like, well, it looks something like this. Sure, it's not the biggest collection on the planet, but each one has a story behind it, and it all started with a gesture of love. I get it. It's weird, sentimental, and a bit odd. But this system means a lot to me. And if you've made it to this part of the video, I hope it means a lot to you too. And if you're still on the fence about it, well, how about you consider collecting for it? I'm serious. Dreamcast collecting is fun, partially because there's a lot of games that came out on this system that never got released anywhere else, but also because it's one of the most affordable platforms to collect for. With the exception of Cannon Spike, most of the super rare games on this system have barely licked $100, with most being well under that. Take, say, Plasma Sword, a great niche 3D Capcom fighter. Rare game, hard to find, but yours for about $40. And if you want to go high end, you got Mars Matrix, Bang.io, Mark of the Wolves, all yours for about $100 each. Compare that to the super high end on another platform, say Nintendo 64, and And these are good games that are worth your time. It's not like the NES, where you had to take out a loan to be able to buy garbage like Secret Scout. It's a system full of hidden gems, with a passionate community behind it. And I'm happy to say that I'm part of that. Now, I'm aware there's a couple of popular games to the system that I didn't talk about today.
Like Sonic Adventure, you dumb twat!
Yeah, like those accursed titles. But they'll have to wait for another day, as will one other curious piece of Dreamcast history. See you next time, and just remember, it's thinking. I mean, or not, it's just a plastic shell filled to the brim with computer bits. Gotta go fast. Jesus Christmas! You know what, if you're watching the end slate now, you should probably subscribe. Let's be real, you're like me, you're a Dreamcast nerd, and maybe I'm working on a Halloween special. Maybe it's about a certain Dreamcast game. Who knows?